world that I'm working to create is a world that should be of interest to all of us. I'm working to create a world that is stable, that is peaceful, where we as human beings realize that we cannot consume the resources of the world the way we are doing, as if there's no tomorrow.
Hello everyone, you are welcome to Nebo TV. My name is Martina Monday. On today's news, we are looking at Africa without Kofi Annan. Kofi Annan was the first black African to serve as Secretary General to the United Nations. He died in Switzerland following a brief illness at the age of 80 on August 18, 2018. But his legacy remains in the hearts of many Africans. The passing of Kofi Annan, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, has been met with tribute from all around the world. His home country, Ghana, declared a week of national mourning. Annan rose through the rank of the UN to become the first black African to head the organization, and his many achievements are rightly being celebrated. Under his tenure, human rights and development were put at the forefront of all UN work, ensuring that the organization focused on all people in all parts of the global society. Courageously, he was also the first UN Secretary General to recognize and condemn the UN's disproportionate focus on Israel as a human rights violator compared to many other similar or worse offenders. It is also right to remember that under his leadership, the UN's reputation was tarnished by two of its worst stains. He was head of UN peacemaking at the time when genocides were perpetrated in Rwanda and the former Republic of Yugoslavia. While UN peacemakers stood by and did nothing, he was in charge of the UN during the oil for food scandal in Iraq. Annan focused intensely on peace and security, ensuring that UN member states accepted the responsibility protect ingredients, protect doctrine. This political mandate emphasizes that the UN, and particularly its peacemaking personnel, must prioritize protecting citizens and civilians in conflict and crisis zones. Its creation was a direct response to the UN's failure to protect civilians in Rwanda and the former Republic of Yugoslavia, where genocide, war crimes, and crime against humanity were perpetrated while peacemakers stood and watched. At that time, Annan was under Secretary General for Peacemaking.
With the implication that if you are going to get into civil war situations, you are in a completely different ball game. The soldiers had to go in better equipped, prepared to take on all eventualities. We'd made the switch, but continued to operate as if it was traditional peacekeeping. In no time, we were in trouble in Somalia, in Rwanda, and in Bosnia, in former Yugoslavia, where the nature of the conflict was such that classic peacekeeping operation and classic attitude of neutrality didn't work.
At that time, Annan was under Secretary General for Peacekeeping, and it raised eyebrows when he was appointed Secretary General immediately afterwards. He replaced Boutros Ghali, who was not reappointed for a second term, in no small part because of the terrible failures under his leadership. Annan further strengthened the role of the UN Secretary General in peacefully settling disputes and came close to securing a settlement in Cyprus. He spoke out against the invasion of Iraq in 2003, but as Secretary General, he also oversaw the staff members at the heart of the oil for food scandal in Iraq, a scheme intended to get food and vital supplies to Iraq citizens, but which also fell prey to corruption on a grand scale. While he was cleared of direct involvement, questions continued to be asked as to what he knew and when, and whether he could and should have done more. The organization launched some important new initiatives. It adopted the Millennium Development Goals, which contributed to significant gains in health, education, and human welfare in many countries around the world. The initiative was so successful that it was succeeded by even more ambitious sustainable development goals. In addition, the international community had established the International Criminal Court and had begun persecuting war criminals for their deeds in the wars. Moving forward, it had also initiated the process of getting corporations to recognize and accept their responsibilities for the environmental, social, and human rights consequences of their activities. This process moved slowly, but its effort ultimately led to the UN Human Rights Council unanimously endorsing the guiding principles on business and human rights in 2011. These have now been incorporated into the human rights policies of many countries and have led to a number of countries adopting national action plans on the human rights responsibilities of business. In February 2008, Annan led a mediation effort in Kenya after election in the East African nation descended into chaos. Violence had broken out after Kenya's former president, Kibaki, was declared the winner of the 2007 presidential poll against opposition leader Raila Odinga. Around 600 people were killed after hoodlums armed with spears, bows, arrows, and machetes destroyed homes around the town of Eldoret near the borders with Uganda. Annan and his team got both leaders to agree to a power-sharing coalition that ended the bloodshed. However, his glittering humanity legacy was overshadowed by the Rwanda genocide and the UN's response to the tragedy. It was 1994 and the battle cries of war were sounding in Rwanda. General Romeo Dallaire, who was leading the UN peacekeeping effort in Rwanda, was sending frantic messages back to New York about troubling news he was hearing about impending attack against the country's minority Tutsi tribe. But his frequent, desperate plea for help were ignored, and he was ordered to pull out the UN peacekeeping troops by the man in charge at the time. As head of the UN Department for Peacekeeping, Annan faced criticism about the organization's handling of the 1994 Rwanda genocide that would end up killing around 800,000 people. Even in his death at age 80, some Rwandans have taken to Twitter to say they cannot forget his blight on what many consider to be an exemplary career. Annan will be remembered as the African head of UN peacekeeping operations who brushed aside pleas from Canadian General Romeo, the head of UN peacekeepers in Rwanda, to reinforce and authorize the peacekeepers to prevent the genocide, and instead ordered peacekeepers withdraw. In his defense, Annan blamed a reluctance among world leaders at the time to send troops to Rwanda. When Annan visited Rwanda in 1998, he received with an undelightful reception and he said, "We must and we do acknowledge that the world failed Rwanda at that time of evil. The international community and the United Nations could not muster the political will to confront it. The world must deeply repent this failure."
We learned lots of lessons from Srebrenica to Rwanda. And for me as an individual, I walked around wondering, how do we avoid another Rwanda? How do we avoid another Srebrenica? And that was one of the struggles that led me to propose to the General Assembly in 1999 that we should look into the question of what we do when we are confronted with another Rwanda.
Despite his Rwanda failings, Annan was widely recognized as one who advanced the African agenda greatly during his tenure at the United Nations. He led the organization for 2 successive 5-year terms, beginning in 1997. Many have lauded his significant contribution to the humanitarian and development issues in Africa, not just through the United Nations, but through his work at the Mo Ibrahim Foundation and the African Progress Panel. Annan launched a global campaign at an African Leaders Summit in 2001, calling for fresh funding to tackle the HIV/AIDS epidemic ravaging major countries in sub-Saharan Africa. A year earlier, Annan had called on world leaders at a UN Security Council meeting to urgently prioritize the AIDS epidemic, which he said was 10 times deadlier than armed conflict on the continent. HIV/AIDS is not only an African problem, it is global and must be recognized as such. But within that international obligation, the fight against AIDS in Africa is an immediate priority, which must be part and parcel of our work for peace and security in that continent, Anna said at the time. It is with profound sadness that I learned of his passing. In many ways, Kofi Annan was the United Nations. He rose through the rank to lead the organization into the new millennium with matchless dignity and determination. Of course, he had his good and bad times, and he was not perfect. Even though he was honored with the Nobel Peace Prize for helping to revitalize the UN that he led for 2 terms, he had some challenges. Because he openly opposed the US and Britain about their decision to invade Iraq in 2003, he was criticized for condemning the invasion of Iraq. Kofi Annan claimed that under the UN Charter, that decision was not legal. He also faced criticism because he was elected Secretary General when he was the head of UN peacekeeping. But 2 of the UN's great failures during his tenure were the Rwanda genocide in 1994 and the massacre in Srebrenica. These motivated him to implement policies to mitigate the issue of genocide, crime against humanity, ethnic cleansing, or war crimes. Fortunately, people recognized his policies and were praising him for his tenure as the UN chief overall, despite the very deep challenges that he faced. Nevertheless, in the wake of various challenges, Kofi Annan was able to make significant changes, impacted positively, and represented Africa in a positive light in the international sphere. But as a whole, Annan's legacy will be celebrated for a long time to come. Don't forget to leave your comment concerning Kofi Annan on the comment section. Do well to like and share this video to friends and families. Also, subscribe to the channel and turn on your notification bell. Again, my name is Martina Monday.